What's going on, everybody? So welcome to my new kitchen. Still needs some work. I'm getting used to not having the gas stove. But I want to do a very special video today and talk to you guys about what it's really like to be a chef. Now, I am not specifically like a trained chef. I have not worked in restaurants, but over the years, I've worked with many chefs. My wife is a trained chef. I have a lot of friends who are chefs, and I've heard a lot of things about being a chef that maybe you don't know about. There's a lot of stuff that shocked me. Maybe you read Anthony Bourdain's book or whatever, but there's a lot of things that were very shocking. And what I find is when people don't know these things, they get into, a restaurant business or they go to culinary school and they start finding out stuff and it's like, wait a minute, this isn't what I thought it would be. I just want to cook and X, Y, Z. So I figured this video would be a great help for anyone who's an aspiring chef just to know some things so you're not surprised. And I'm not trying to do this video to deter people or to scare people away. These are not about techniques. These are specifically things that are like kind of on the business side, on the culinary side that I want to give you information on. And again, it's not to scare you away, but I do want you to be realistic, because oftentimes when we see a job, it's like when we grow up and we're like, oh, I want to be a doctor, and you see like, oh, they're working with patients and it's fun and this and that. You might not know all the legal stuff that goes on or all the training that goes on, and sometimes knowing those things will help you make a good, valuable, honest, empowered decision. So let's get after it. And real quick, just a quick side note, if you are a chef or if you're already in culinary school or something, please don't be offended by this. This is a generalization. I'm not saying this is exact for everyone, but there are things that might be a bit of a wake-up call. And if little Josh from Brothers Green can help you out, maybe I will. So here we go. Number one, culinary school might be a waste of money. I said it. That's right, I said it. I'm not saying that's the case for every single person. I know a lot of people that love going to culinary school, but here's the thing. Culinary school, you spend a lot of money, you train, you learn a lot of techniques, depending on which type of culinary school you go to. For example, let's say that you go to French culinary school. Well, you're learning French techniques. So if you want to be a French chef and learn julienne and all these different techniques and soufflé and bechamel sauces, then maybe it's great. However, that might not help you out in the real world when you get into a kitchen, unless it's specifically a French restaurant. And a lot of restaurants now are more fusion, Americano, whatever the different cuisine is. So a lot of people spend a lot of money, they assume, and I assumed this too when I was younger. I was like, well, I want to be a cook, I'm going to go to culinary school. I'm really grateful that I was talked out of that, because it would have been a lot of time spent. And also another thing is you get trained very, very specifically. Now there are lots of different alternative culinary schools, but the kind of standard culinary school, they train you very specifically how to do things a certain way. And sometimes it can almost make people a bit robotic. It's great if you want to like do all these techniques, but you might kind of miss out on the creativity or on the flow. So if you're on the fence about culinary school and you're worried about like it's too expensive, but I feel like I need to go, you do not need to go. I know tons of chefs who have worked at some of the best restaurants in the entire world, some of Michelin stars, who have never been to culinary school. They're self-taught. You can go on YouTube and watch channels like ours. There's a lot of other great YouTube channels. You can read books. You can just get in the kitchen and start cooking. There's so many different ways. Take cooking classes, hang out with a friend who's a chef, learn from him. Number two, and this might come as a bit of a shock, but it ties into the first one, is chefs don't necessarily care if you know how to cook. So you might be a little bit shocked to hear that. You're like, why? That doesn't make any sense. But here's the thing. A chef is more interested in whether you have a strong work ethic than if you know specific techniques. So I hear this a lot of times where people go in, they went to culinary school, they trained in some style of cooking. They go to a restaurant and all the chef cares about is, can you learn to follow the things that he wants you to do? Because he's gonna say, okay, great, I need you to chop onions all day. I need you to saute onions this way. I need you to make a sauce this way. He wants to know if you can follow his directions. And that might be very different than the way you trained. So while culinary school might seem like this great thing and you get this flashy resume, usually they're gonna go off work ethic, personality, and they're gonna just throw you into the kitchen and see if you can hang. Can you handle the heat? That is the question. Number three, I'm sorry to say this if you didn't know, but for chefs, typically the pay sucks. And that might come as a shock to you, or maybe you already know that, but the truth is, chefs work long, hard hours and they do not get paid very well. Oftentimes servers make more money than chefs, which to me is very backwards. And there are some restaurants that are starting to change that up, but servers can make more money in tips than chefs make through an entire day or a night shift of cooking. And I don't really understand why that is, but it's very much a labor of love kind of thing. So if you're expecting to make the big bucks, very few chefs do. That's why chefs get into TV and write books and start organizations and all this stuff to actually, well, one of the reasons is to make money. But don't expect, like, not every chef, don't assume if you're gonna become a chef, you're gonna be this rock star chef instantly and make a ton of money. You're gonna be potentially grinding it out for many, many, many years before you make any significant amount of dough. Number 4, being a chef in a restaurant is not all celebrity, flashy, glamorous. Like, of course, TV, they've really glamorized being chefs. You see these documentaries and these TV shows where like chefs have become sort of these rock stars. And while that is the case in many situations, most of the situations, it's just people behind the kitchen just working their freaking asses off, making very little money and not being like, you know, this flashy, like, cool, check out my ideas. Like, when you're gonna start working in a restaurant, there's gonna be a head chef who runs everything, and he doesn't necessarily care about how creative you are and what all your ideas are and that you wanna be this kind of chef. And I actually read an article recently that a lot of restaurants are struggling to find good cooks because everybody wants to just get in the business and become this celebrity chef and have a TV show all of a sudden. And I completely get that. It's fun, and there's a lot of glitz and glamour and stuff going on with that. But it is a big struggle for restaurants right now because they're trying to train people that just want to work. But a lot of these younger kids kind of come in, they're hot shots, they grew up watching the Food Network or maybe watching Brothers Green. They're like, yeah, I know how to cook and I'm gonna try this and do this. It's like, no, when you get into a restaurant, they want you to follow exactly what it is that they're doing, because like this is their name on the restaurant. So there isn't much room for creativity often, unless you become a head chef. Then of course that's different, but I'm talking about like some of the steps to becoming a head chef. Once you're a head chef, that has its own whole set of craziness, problems, excitement, and fun. But this is just for more like us being an inspiring chef. Number 5, the hours are extremely long. Chefs do not work your standard 9 to 5. They work very odd hours, oftentimes late night shifts. Sometimes they're getting in very early in the morning and they're working all day doing the prep, and then the kitchen service happens. So expect, if you're gonna be a chef, expect to be working 10, 12, maybe even 14 or 16-hour days as a chef. So if you like working all the time, that's great, but if you're just looking for a standard job and you love cooking, you might want to look elsewhere. And at the end of this video, I am going to talk about the different types of jobs that you can have that are not being a chef in a sort of standard way. Just a quick little announcement. I started a podcast. If you guys are interested in checking that out, it's called You Enjoy Life. You can click the link below, but it's also through an app called Anchor, which is a really dope app. It's actually my drummer in my band many years ago, he created, and they're crushing it right now. If you're into podcasting, you want to make your own podcast, you can just check it out. It's super cool, very intuitive. It's kind of like Instagram stories, but for voice. You can add music to it and do your thing. But anyhow, back to the video with number 6. Speaking of number 6, this one's interesting because it's maybe good or bad depending on who you are, but the partying with chefs can be very hard because they're working long hours, they're busting their ass, the job is very stressful. A lot of kitchens, the drinks, the drugs, they start flowing, and that might seem exciting to you, but also know like a lot of chefs are using that, of course, to cope with the stress of the job. So I've talked to a lot of people who like behind the scenes, you know, they're drinking on the job, or they're just like trying to grind it out, and then after work they're partying hard. And a lot of times you're partying with other chefs because the hours are so weird. Number 7, this is an interesting one. When you go to apply to be a chef, you know, depending on the type of restaurant, they may ask you for a resume, they may just throw you in the kitchen, they may get you to cook something. But one kind of myth that I've heard that I know has also been true for some people is they might just ask you to make an omelet. They might say, go make me an omelet. And depending on how well that omelet is, they will decide whether they're gonna hire you or not. That's because some people say that just making an omelet, even though it's a simple thing, like the way in which you make it shows a lot about you. The way that you scramble the eggs, the heating process, the seasoning, like it tells a chef a lot about the type of cook that you are. So it might seem like a simple, mundane thing, but maybe prepare and work on your omelet skills a little bit going in. It might help you get a job. It might not, but I've heard that that has actually been true for some people. Number 8, the schedule for being a chef is very, very rough. Do not, like I said, with the hours, the schedule is very similar. Do not expect to be working normal hours. Holidays, birthdays, all those things, you're gonna be definitely dedicating your life to this restaurant, so don't expect to have all the holidays off and all the traveling and stuff. So this is a job for people that really, really love it. And if you're expecting to like celebrate Christmas, the restaurant's probably gonna be open during Christmas and Thanksgiving and whatever other holidays. So just even New Year's, just be prepared. If you're gonna become a chef, you're not gonna have the normal hours off. And part of that is You're also not gonna necessarily have the normal schedule of other people, so you're probably gonna be hanging out with people in the chef world. A lot of chefs get together after shifts, like, oh, it's 2 a.m., 3 a.m., the restaurant's finally closed down, everyone's left. All the chefs from different bars tend to get together. So a lot of chefs I know, like, they're friends with other chefs because it's sort of the only world where they each understand each other and they have the time to actually party. Which is amazing to me is that, like, after working a 12, 14-hour day that you want to go out and party after, but a lot of chefs, they'll party to 6 a.m., they'll sleep for a couple hours and they'll be back in the next day like, oh God. And that blows my mind, but that's just part of the territory. Number 9, which goes along with this, is if you're someone that has a partner or relationship, dating can be very tough. You may have seen some chefs, like, if you're dedicated to that work, it is a full-time business. But again, with the hours and scheduling, I've heard a lot of chefs talk about just working their schedule out because they're always doing something and the restaurant is so demanding that dating can be a very hard thing when you're working in restaurants. So that is something that you want to think about. I'm not saying it doesn't work. There's plenty of people in great relationships, but just know that, again, this is not 9 to 5. So if you're trying to have a normal relationship or expecting the person that you're dating to, like, get that, I can only hang out after 3 a.m., just know that those things might come up. Also, chefs tend to work on the weekends a lot, so you might not have those weekends. A lot of chefs I know, maybe they have Monday and Tuesday off. Usually the restaurant industry, a lot of places, Monday is off. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday are huge days in the restaurant industry, so people will often take Monday off. So you might be a Monday off person when all your friends and your girlfriend or wife, whatever, they might be working, which maybe you like that or maybe you don't, but I'm just giving you a little bit of awareness. Number 10 is things can definitely get pretty hectic in the kitchen. So be prepared to get cut, burned, bruised, hurt, singed, whatever it is. I mean, I know sometimes when I'm cooking in the kitchen, I burn myself and whatever, and I can pause and go and put a Band-Aid on my boo-boo and, ice it or whatever, but even though I don't actually do that. But with chefs at restaurants, I have friends who will, they'll be working at a deep fryer and oil splatters on their arm and it burns them and they just have to keep working. They don't have time. There's no other person waiting. You can't tag someone else. Hey, tag, you're in. I burned my arm. No, it's like you gotta throw a Band-Aid on real quick or wrap your finger up and get back on the job. So if you like that high intensity, high heat, high extreme, then that is amazing. But if you're someone who prefers to kind of chill out and cook and have some fun, then maybe being a chef isn't for you. Now, those are 10 things that every aspiring chef I really believe should know and might help you out to make a decision on what you want to do. But I promised that I would tell you some alternative examples. So a lot of times in cooking, we assume that if I want to be a professional cook or I love cooking, I want that to be my life, that I have to become a chef, right? It's like I need to go to school, I need to study, and there's this trajectory. But first off, I didn't do that. Mike didn't do that. Mike, when Mike graduated college, I was like, dude, you could go that route. You can come and just work with me. And we started our own little underground sort of catering business. There's things like Private Chef. Catering has its similarities to being a chef, but it also has its differences. There's very different timing. It can be more laid back, except for that actual few hours of service. You can teach cooking classes. You can start your own YouTube channel. You could write cookbooks. You could do a vlog. You could have an Instagram account. You could create, a TV show, like I said, a YouTube show, but you could create a TV show. Those are obviously some of the more high-level things, but I found there are so many different ways to get involved in cooking. You could work with farms to do cooking demos. I really think a big thing is the private chefing life. There's something really cool about it where you have a couple clients you're cooking for. I used to deliver people weekly healthy lunches. That's really cool. There's so many different ways. You could have a food truck. You could have you could work, at a Smorgasburg in Williamsburg where they have these big food festivals. You could have this thing where, it can be a little hectic at times, but you're only serving a few things and it's more fun. You're interacting with customers. The other thing about being a chef is you're usually behind the scenes, so you don't really get the payoff. It's like being an actor in a movie. You don't necessarily get to be there and people cheer and watch the movie. You're doing it, but it's very silent. And there's something about being a chef that's very similar to that. You don't necessarily get to see people's reactions. You're kind of hidden away in the kitchen often. Sometimes they have open kitchens, but think about, what do you really want in your life? What do you love about food? If you're destined and you know that you want to go into food as a business, you're like, this is what I want to do in my life and nothing is going to stop me, that's great. If a restaurant is for you, cool. Maybe you want to just figure out how to start your own restaurant or start with having a little taco cart, which maybe one day becomes a restaurant. But if you're someone who isn't necessarily the best at working for other people or you don't want to work these super long hours, you need to think about the other options. And luckily, in our case, we figured out how to take our love of food and do it in a different way where it wasn't as crazy demanding. Granted, having a cooking show is extremely demanding in other ways, which I can talk about too, but I have a lot more fun doing it. There's a lot more payoff. Every day is a completely new day. It's not as being a chef, it's like you're cooking the same thing every day. It can get very boring. It's not always as creative as people think. But again, there are plenty of chefs that I know who love what they do, and that is like, they know that what they want to do is work 16 hours a day and make amazing food and push the limits and feed people and try new restaurant concepts out, and I love that. I think it's absolutely amazing. So I hope this video helped give you guys some insider information on what it might be like to be a chef. If you're aspiring to be one, just know that like you can do anything that you want to do. You don't have to follow the standard path that everybody else is taking, and that is a huge part of this video. It's like, yes, you can go the standard route and, you know, become a dishwasher and go through the whole process and then like start your way up to like prepping vegetables and blah blah blah, and maybe that's what you want to do and maybe that's great. But if you're in that job right now, or maybe it doesn't sound very good to you, know there are other things that you can do in the food world that might be better for you, even food styling or culinary producing, whatever it might be. Thank you guys so much. Subscribe to this video. Even though this video wasn't cooking, I hope you enjoyed it. And if you'd like to see more videos kind of behind the scenes, or are there any questions that you have or things you want to know about being a professional cook, being a YouTuber, hit us up. Peace.